There's three things that stand out to me as some of those strategies that would be most effective in raising the bar for startups and technology workers here in the greater Lex region. One that I think you'll hear from startup founders, it's always hard, it's been especially hard for the past 6 to 12 months, is access to capital. It's really hard to start a business, and I think there's a little bit of a cultural component to that. I think we regionally here can tend to have some risk aversion, but I think that that access to capital, especially from the thoroughbred racing side, we know how to take risks, how to take smart risks, and so I think there are some opportunities there. The second I would say is visibility. So I think there's just a lot of these stories that haven't been told. They haven't been told internally, that haven't been shared well outside of Lexington. One of the organizations here that's doing a lot of really good work with it is Middletech and the Middletech podcast. So they've got hundreds of episodes. They also do a developer-focused one for, it's called VisitLEX for more real estate development. But they do a really good job of sharing those stories and getting the word out. And I think the third thing is just density. It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. I know I've watched Nashville very closely, and they've attracted several technology businesses as well. And so getting a company like Eventbrite to Nashville, 5 or 10 years ago has helped them land more recently Oracle's national headquarters that have moved from California to Texas and now to Nashville. And I think a similar thing here. It's just getting that density is what attracts more business and talent.
In sort of our tourism spaces, we talk a lot about that halo effect. And I think that's a really important thing to call out when we're saying, yes, of course, you've got an accommodations expense, but there's also a lot of other, there's ways that dollar gets handed down in a community's ecosystem from a visitor who's checked into a hotel or who's paid for a meal at a restaurant. And so we love to see the way that dollar travels throughout a community and the compounding impact that it has. And the ways, like I said earlier, that we've got visitors who are coming in, paying for these services, and then those services are helping us fund our core sort of city services and really impacting our quality of life. And I think we see that in all kinds of ways, be it the University of Kentucky or our economic development partners, the strategies that we're putting out. I think we see also a really strong play as it relates to brand awareness. If you think about VisitLEX as sort of the front door, really, to the community, oftentimes we've got the opportunity to be someone's first touch point into the city. And once we've gotten them hooked or gotten Lexington on their radar, then we've got the opportunity to bring them in. And so I think those are just a couple things that I would highlight, both the way that the dollar travels through the community and impacts, and also the way that our brand expands with the work that we start out doing in tourism, but then also have the opportunity to take you further down into the funnel. One place that is particularly visible is in these quality of life articles that we work so hard to get placed on the national level. So I might be interested in, let's just say that I'm taking something like a USA Today, right? Very widespread, easily accessible daily newspaper that touches on things all across the country. So the fact is, the core of the article may be about bourbon, which is clearly a tourism product, but it's also an economic product. It's one of Kentucky's great exports. And so you've got the opportunity to gather people, to pull people into these stories that we're telling out of our region. And I think that helps obviously elevate sort of overall awareness and the ways in which we get to tell Lexington's story or greater Lexington's story.
No, it's a great question. And I would say, so Jenna Greathouse is on our team, and she is our Senior EVP of Economic Development, and she has been doing this for nearly 30 years. So she is our in-house resource who has been working with our companies to recruit and attract for amount of time. And she and I talked about this before today. And I think the biggest thing that's changed over the last 5 years and going forward is how important people, the workforce, is to economic development. It's been important, but the way that you message quality of place, the way that we are intentional about trying to turn a visitor into prospective talent, or going after folks that have left here but have a good impression of this community. The strategy itself, the phase one of us looking at and trying to find through data now with big data, people on their phones that are alumni of our 10 colleges and universities. Technology has changed the way we go after economic development. So, and the way that we can attract and market to people. So I think that's been the biggest shift and change that you see in this strategy, because it's the first time ever that we're really trying to leverage that quality of place and economic development messaging geared towards the workforce. The pandemic really changed what people were looking for, and quality of place has become just as important. So we've got to tell the story of what we have to offer here, not just in Lexington, but also in the region. And so I think that regional messaging has also been something that has amplified because we all have unique assets to offer. Each community continuing to see how they benefit and they win from a regional approach, and making sure that their unique identities are profiled through, whether it's through economic development, the way we're marketing the region to job creators and site selectors, that everyone, that their unique strengths are showcased. And we are intentionally committed to making sure that that's part of it. I think resourcing is also a continued challenge, just making sure you've got enough funds, because marketing is expensive, and to do it right, you've got to keep it going. You can't just start it and stop it. So I think everyone seeing how they're winning, I think the funding piece and properly resourcing it, and I think just continuing to find opportunities where collaboration makes sense. And I think a good example of that is when we're talking about land and sites, which is always a hot button issue here in Fayette County, but you are seeing for the first time ever leaders in Madison and Scott County and Fayette County wanting to work together on a large business park in Scott County. I mean, and leaders working on an interlocal agreement where they all can share revenues and win. I mean, that's the future. Collaboration is the future. So I think those are some of the, I switched that into a positive, but I mean, just continuing to identify those opportunities I think is important.
Yeah, when I think of some of our biggest opportunities, the quality of place is a huge one. I think people really like living here. I think the Happy Chandler quote always rings true to me. You know, people who are from here, they want to be here. But I think they don't think they can, especially if they are in startups or want to work in technology. I think a lot about, especially being on campus. You know, there are a record-breaking freshman class coming in. Are those folks going to stay here? And so I think our universities, the talent that we bring into this city is an incredible asset. I think our opportunities are to look at ways to capture that. And I think one of the biggest ones is through relationships. And so we've got 4 years for these freshmen to meet someone outside of these campus borders. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do. And it just takes a single connection, whether that's an internship, a mentor, some experience. I think that's a huge opportunity for us. We've already sold those students on moving here. They're going to have a great time while they're in Lexington. So I think just capitalizing on that and saying, you can stay here.
I think that there are fantastic opportunities really coming online in the next 5 to 10 years that I think will continue to level up our product offering. I'm really excited about them. One in particular is down on the Kentucky River. Our just and I think the folks at the city would tell you, I just politely harassed them for 2 years, and I think I just wore them down. I was like, we do not have public access to the river in this city. Why? Not everyone, but a lot of people love getting in a kayak after work and just taking a little paddle, getting on a stand-up paddleboard, fishing. We've got this beautiful natural resource, and it's just sitting there, and unless you happen to have a farm with access, like, you can't do it in Fayette County. And so we were really fortunate to have the opportunity to purchase, as a city, fortunate to have the opportunity to purchase Mr. John Kelly's family's sort of land and legacy down there, 31 acres along the Kentucky River. The initial site planning is happening right now. I think you'll see for really an entire generation this first opportunity to engage with the river in a meaningful way. I also think not that far from the Lexington Cemetery, you've got what a local developer is doing with what is known as Turner Commons or the Commons. Some really exciting things coming online with respect to that. Parcel of land, it's an interesting shape. It's kind of long and narrow, but there's a lot of acreage in there that's just been sitting fairly idle with little activity. And so I look at downtown, the Distillery District and Turner Commons as sort of this nice little triangle of districts that we've got the opportunity to share with visitors and to send people to enjoy, be it food, beverage, entertainment. Probably the biggest name that has been announced thus far going into Turner Commons is RD1 Distillery. Of course, you're probably familiar with the tasting room that they had in the Distillery District, but they're actually building out an entire experience around distillation and tasting in the Commons. So that's pretty cool. Of course, Town Branch Park coming online in 2025. Another great touchstone, really the living room of our community, a place for us to invite literally everyone to come through. It's just adjacent to the convention center, which is great synergy. And then it's right across the street really from the gateway into the Distillery District. Another corridor that I think has got phenomenal potential over the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously you've got Manchester Music Hall and the Manchester Hotel right there on the sort of east end, and then the west end anchored by the James E. Pepper Distillery campus, the Burl, et cetera. So I think you've got the potential to see a lot of really interesting infill in that space that could continue to evolve the sort of quality of life amenities that we all really appreciate, no matter how we choose to spend our free time and our disposable income, an opportunity to really invest. So those are just a few things that are top of mind that I see coming online in the short term.
On your phone, on your socials, if you want to stay in touch with the Greater Lex campaign, what we're putting out there to external audiences is actually a great way to educate yourself about the messaging within the region, because the things that will be going out to these audiences are promoting our industries and our job creation, our unique quality of life assets. So if you're on social media and you're on Facebook, just type in Greater Lex KY, follow that. If you're on Instagram, same thing, look up Greater Lex KY, start following that. If you're on LinkedIn, do the same thing. So that's the best way from a messaging standpoint to follow what we're doing. And I encourage you to follow Commerce Lexington too as well. But as Brittany said, coming to the regional, if you really want to be engaged with these efforts, please come to the Regional Summit. It really is an all-encompassing event where you're able to network with leaders in the region. You're able to learn about where the region stands, to talk about economic development, policy, and talent in one location, and to provide your feedback. That's where we want that. And then just coming to things like this, we want to be out here more talking to groups within the community and getting your thoughts on this to see if this makes sense. And it's an evolving process that we will want to tweak and change as we move forward, as the landscape continues to evolve and change. So I would say through social media is the best way to do it. And anytime you have thoughts or questions, just to reach directly out to the chamber. I don't know, Mary Quinn, if you have additional.
Staying involved with us is really easy. We have very active social media present. At VisitLEX is our handle. We use the hashtag #ShareTheLex for all kinds of fun stuff, and it's a great way for you to help us populate content that we then turn around and share with people who are outside of this market. So just remember that hashtag #ShareTheLex. We do a local newsletter, so if you're interested in just staying in touch with the types of messaging and information that we're sending out at VisitLEX, it's really easy to sign up on our website. But that's a great entry point. And then, of course, our visitor center is open. We welcome, if you're hosting, please feel free to bring people in, get to know us, work with us, share your ideas. We've got a great team, and we'd love to continue to develop that ambassador pool that really makes Lexington a distinguishing factor. I did have someone in the visitor center tell me once that they were mistaken because they thought that folks in North Carolina were the nicest people on the planet, but that actually folks from Lexington, Kentucky won the contest.
Okay. I'd say, yeah, pretty similar for us. Check out social media. So for both Awesome Inc. Or the Tech Association of the Bluegrass, tabky.org and awesomeinc.org, and you can get all the links from there. And then, as far as getting yourself, informed and how do I dive right in? Come to a 5 Across event. They're fun. I described it as Shark Tank, but I probably left off like, imagine you're an audience member in Shark Tank, but it feels like a WWE event. They're fun. We just have fun with it, and I think it just makes it, really, really enjoyable and really approachable. So usually have a few hundred folks who show up, and you get a nice little tour of some of the great mid-sized venues downtown. And then I mentioned it earlier, but to hear some of those stories in a longer form, the Middle Tech podcast is a really good outlet for that. They just do a great job, and a lot of great stories there.
Yes, absolutely. We see an influx of visitors in September and October, and April for that matter. So there's no doubt that the thoroughbred industry being headquartered here has a great impact on sort of the seasonality and or I should say peak season that we see in the hospitality industry. So I'm thrilled. I was thrilled, absolutely, when Keeneland said that they were expanding so that they could accommodate more people on a race day because they sell out tickets as fast as they can put them up. So we know we've got an opportunity to really continue to invite more and more folks here to experience racing at Keeneland. It's, I love this city for so many reasons. Sometimes I get feedback from folks who are like, why do you lean so much into horses? Lexington is so much more in horses. And I'm like, yes, I know, but we've got two really, really distinctive industries that are fantastic calling cards when we're talking to external audiences, and horses and bourbon do that for us all day long, every day. So hence our really leaning into horse capital. So absolutely, we see a direct correlation. And it's not just hotels, it's restaurants, transportation companies, tours, etc. So
I gave you all two numbers in my introduction. One was 64. That was our 64% concentration of tech workers. The other is 56, and that's for the year 1956. Which I think was the single biggest economic development moment, changed the course of history for Lexington. Any guesses at what happened in that year? You all are great. And so I think there's something really interesting with the IBM story. I think we might be here. UK was here. I think that wouldn't have changed, but I think almost everything else in Lexington would be different. So I think that's one of the places to start. So many of the startups today, and even those that have had a successful run, are folks who came from outside of Lexington because of IBM. And I think the Lexmark story parlays into that. But I think we've been for a long time just really reliant on those two big companies. And so I think one of the biggest things, and part of our role at Awesome Inc. is to be a bit of that convener and to help make connections. But I'm not starting the next IBM or Lexmark. So I think one of the best things that we can do, especially when it comes to supporting those businesses and attracting that tech talent, is just helping to make those visible. IBM was super visible. I think Lexmark has such a visible campus, but I think there are so many of these smaller organizations that people just don't know about. So I do think that's one of the biggest pieces. A specific example in some of the work we're doing is looking at our students. So Fayette County Public Schools has a really exciting new thing coming. They're consolidating their technology centers to what we call the Hill. It's downtown in the former Harold Leader building. And I'm really excited about one of the programs coming there and how that can bring awareness to our K through 12 students, as well as bringing in industry partnerships to that area. And then the universities, of course, just continuing to make those connections for between students and local industry.
So the momentum, when we showed the graph, the momentum index is really looking back at the 3 data points we talked about that we're going to be measuring and watching, the areas where we were below the national average. So job creation, GDP, the wages that people are making, the growth that the region is having in terms of attracting and retaining people. Those are some of the key data points that are underpinning whether or not a region has momentum. And so and also around like key sectors that we know are growing clusters, if you're growing those. So back to Nick's point, like seeing that lower percentage of technology workers, that's a data point that would be flagging on our momentum, like that we're not growing in a sector, in an area where there's growth across the country. So I hope that makes sense. And so to answer that question, the 7 action items, the entire plan is meant to impact the momentum index, to try to move that needle and to create more momentum here in this community. So that's a simple answer to that question.